If you're a business owner or senior manager, you probably had more than enough about all the wonderful opportunities awaiting you in the era of digitalization.
Whether it is big data, cloud, data science, or whatever buzzword is currently trendy.
If you would like to hear someone dissecting these claims and showing you what it actually takes to improve business processes, you're in the right place.
This is Between Data and Risk, where we discuss real-life examples of what works and what doesn't in the world of business operations. Hello, I'm Artur Guja, Cognition Shared Solutions Chief Risk and Strategy Officer, and with me is my co-host, your friendly neighborhood data guy, Dr. Malen Siwek.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to the fifth episode of Between Data and Risk. Today we'll be talking about Serai, the Hong Kong financial startup launched 3 years ago under the auspices of HSBC, and which is now closing after failing to build a commercially viable business. We're excited to have with us today our guest, Ambrose Wong, who is the COO of Serai and has agreed to share some of his experience with us. Hello, Ambrose.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Great. So you've had quite a long career in HSBC itself. We've been together on the Aspiring CRO program back in 2018, and shortly thereafter you joined what was to become the Serai startup. Can you tell us a bit more about the beginnings and how the idea for Serai and what it is actually?
Serai is a startup sponsored by HSBC. So back 3 or 4 years ago, it started as an idea of HSBC has been for the last 150 years plus have been supporting the trade community by providing a lot, actively participating in providing trade finance. And there is a strong desire within the bank to say, look, we actually need to do more for the industry, not just by purely providing trade finance, but helping to provide the next generation of trade facilitation, enabling trade to happen. So there is a question about what can we actually do for the community. And that's what Serai is about. We're actually helping there to simplify, our vision statement is to simplify global trade. That's actually what we actually want to achieve right from the beginning. And everybody got very excited, and we started our journey three and a half years ago.
So initially, the platform was supposed to be like I saw one of the materials where it stated that you've got Facebook for your personal connections, you've got LinkedIn for your professional connections, and Serai was supposed to be for your company connections.
Yeah.
Right. So that was the initial platform that was offered, and that then kind of a lot of pivoting and transformations of the business followed. Was that pivoting kind of to as a source of innovation, or was it more kind of trying to chase a specific audience? Why so many ideas in such a short time?
I think for a combination of reasons, right? So we have a very bold vision statement that I just mentioned earlier, that we want to simplify global trade, but that's a huge problem to solve, right? So within the whole soft trade industry, there are different, they're within the larger end of our customers, right? The larger traders, their problem statement is actually quite different to their peers at the smaller end, right? Whereas, for example, if you're a larger buyers and sellers, your challenge is not trying to find your suppliers. You probably have developed a very steady supply chain already. The challenge for them is about simplifying their global supply chain. Whereas for your smaller manufacturers and smaller buyers, they're actually trying to find, okay, what is the right supply chain for me? So the problem statement actually quite different. So we actually got ourselves into a very exciting space of there are a lot of different problems that we can actually solve. And so we actually need to kind of work out, where we actually want to spend our time and energy on. And also, we do hypotheses. We do bold hypotheses, and then we actually go and do testing. Not everything works out, right? After we do analysis and we do this, we would actually, and the research would actually suggest us, okay, this may not be a path that we actually want to take quickly, and then we actually need to pivot. That's one. I guess secondly is also, we started our company at a just before COVID. We kind of we formed the company in 2019, and then COVID started hitting in 2020. So the whole global supply chain actually changes forever, right? The problem statement, or when we actually the type of research and the problem statements that people share with us within the industry in 2019 is very different to what we actually asked them in 2020. So again, that actually we will have to tailor our solutions to the new problem statements and help our target customers.
We recorded a whole podcast on surviving paradigm shifts, and we discussed it. But we are living in another paradigm shift right now. My question: you were company's COO, Chief Operating Officer. I would like to ask you about how did you organize your operations at the beginning? Like, what was your plan for the processes? What was your planning? Because you started pretty big. It was around 100 people, I think, if I remember correctly.
At different stages of, we have, up to 100 people at different stages. But then I think, look, as a digital startup, we try not to develop operations, right? We would actually work out and say, okay, well, if this is digital propositions, it needs to be digital, right, from the beginning, rather than actually, go and let's start building some manual processes. And now there were, I'm not trying to lie and say that there were many processes, but if we actually have to, then, we would, if we actually have the opportunity to actually build a fully digital process, then why not, right? So there's actually very little physical operations that we actually have to support our business model.
All right, thank you.
And when you kind of when you started, it was supposed to be a platform. So was the vision to provide software or a service or a combination of both? Because this is obviously these three paradigms are approached very differently.
I think towards one of our solutions is a SaaS solution, software as a solution, that we actually help customers to map their supply chain, right? So one of the problem statements for the larger for the larger suppliers and buyers is not about. I mentioned earlier that the challenge is not about finding another supplier, right? Because they actually have a pretty stable supply chain already. But it's actually getting an end-to-end understanding of their supply chain, right? From a lot of the brands and buyers out there, they have a very good knowledge about who their immediate suppliers are and what do they do and what is their standard, etc. But as you actually go further up tier 2, what we call tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 suppliers, all the way from who's actually supplying you this piece of garment to who actually plants and produce the cotton that is used, right? So as you actually go deeper and deeper into that, they do not necessarily have all those information that they actually need. And as the world has evolved, and there's a lot of regulations and that requires us to have that knowledge, whether that's for and that's a lot of them is actually for ESG purposes, right? To actually meet the social standard, because to actually meet the environmental standards, if you actually want to produce a garment and claim and be compliant with different carbon emission standard of then you actually need to know who your suppliers are and whether they're actually meeting those carbon emission standards as well. So there's a huge demand of of tools and to help them to actually understand and provide the data of that end-to-end supply chain, which is an industry challenge at the moment, and that's the phase that we're actually in.
I concur. I had a pleasure to work with the Reckitt company, and they are really big on sustainability and social responsibility, and it's not just on paper. I must admit that I admire this company for that, and tracking the source of all the components used was a big thing for them. They wanted to know exactly if what they produce was produced responsibly and mm, sustainably. So it is a challenge. Plus, it's a great opportunity for data science to start influencing and optimizing supply chains. And also from my experience, getting the proper data to optimize supply chains is a headache. Having it on one platform would be amazing thing to just be able to download it or upload our models. The whole demand forecasting would be amazing to have it.
So the Serai platform, when customers got the software, you mentioned software as a service, they received it. Did they receive any kind of support in terms of additional data sources or expertise that was on top of the software solution?
What we were trying to help them with is actually build out that network, right? To actually gain. So, I mean, the information, as I mentioned earlier, so a lot of the brands, they would actually have they would actually know who the immediate suppliers are. So, and the tier 1 would know who the tier 2, the tier 2 would know who the tier 3 suppliers are, right? The problem is that, that data actually sits with, each individual supplier, right? And within their layer, it doesn't necessarily get transferred to a long supply chain. So that's actually, and that's where we actually need to have and there's no systematic way to collect that information. And
so would Serai then go to those third, fourth level suppliers and connect them to the platform and ask them for the data, so that, or what was it the client's responsibility to actually get those that trace that chain and use the platform as a database to
pretty much as a tool to actually help them to trace that.
Okay. And it's an interesting choice, the garment industry. Was there a particular reason why this particular segment was selected, as opposed to, for example, food, which is always big on kind of the origin, or electronics?
I think if we actually in the early research that we've done, I mean, the size of the industry and the opportunity is huge. But also, I mean, when we're actually talking to the suppliers and brands, what we're actually trying to build is actually transparency all the way into, your supply chain, right? So, a lot of, if one of the supplier thinks that, look, I'm not going to share that information with you because that is actually my secret source, right? I'm not going to let you know who my suppliers are. Then that won't work if they have, because this is actually trying to build transparency. But when we're actually talking to the industry participants, transparency is not an issue for them, right? They long for that transparency, and it's not the and having the supply chain details is not a secret sauce, because if that's the only thing that they actually hold on to create their business, they said, look, according to them, they wouldn't have a business because they actually need to create. I'm actually getting stuff from my suppliers, but I actually need to add value and actually do something to that before I actually further supply it to my customers. So and that is very important to us, right? That transparency is not a barrier. So, and hence our choice.
If I could take a step back, and we spoke recently with a gentleman who was supporting startups and was investing in startups and trying to. We had a discussion about the way he tries to help and support his portfolio. I would like to make a step back and ask you about your experience being founded by tier 1 bank and like having this big brother hanging, behind your shoulder. like, what are the bright sides? Let's start with the bright sides of, besides of course having the money. Like, what did you get from working with such a reputable big organization as HSBC is?
I think one of them is the confidence that we actually get from our customers as well, right? So if it's a big problem in the industry to solve, but then for a startup with no background, with no trail record, to come and approach some of the biggest brands and say, look, trust us, we will be able to build, even if you're actually presenting a really good idea, but then we'll say, trust us and actually let us build something for you. It's difficult. It will be very difficult to sell, right? Whereas having the backing from a big investors like HSBC, that actually adds weight to that, and also a lot of those companies are customers of HSBC. Now, we actually operate very independently from HSBC. So what we do is not, HSBC is really our investors, but they would be able to connect us with some of the industry participants who are also their customers and say, look, we're interested in speaking to Serai, and that introduction helps as well. So I think those are really useful for us to actually get our first step. Where if you are just a startup, a random startup, trying to actually build that confidence in the B2B world, it's a big challenge.
The credibility,
and obviously the management of Serai was composed of very experienced individuals like yourself, sourced directly from the HSBC pool of talent. So I think that the strength of the management team there must have been a real advantage as well.
Absolutely, right. So we have a number of us actually moving, have strong banking experience, and that also is an investment that we have made into the company, that also will be able to help with, again, to give our customers more confidence about what we're actually building as well.
Were there any downsides, like offset to, because building credibility, we know from experience, even we are on the market for 15 years, building credibility is still a challenge. People don't know us. We are not, McKinsey. So, is there any price? Do you need to, sell your soul and kidney? Anything that you would consider like?
Not sure. I wouldn't say a downside as such, but look, building on what I just mentioned earlier. I mean, we build that credibility, and we. Having such a strong background actually gives us the initial kickoff of the customer's faith in us, but we can't take that for granted, right? So we actually need to put in extra hard work, and there's repetition risk if we actually deliver a solution that doesn't meet the standard, right? So right from day one, we actually try to develop solutions we hold ourselves to a very high standard, which again, requires a lot more sweat and tears and hard work by the team, and also investment, right? To building the solution up to the standard that we would like that to, and with risk management coming into play as well, where we would actually making sure that our controls that we actually build into the tools and systems that we're building, the sort of rigor in the sort of testing of the solutions that we deploy, would need to meet the standard that we would hold ourselves accountable to.
When you mentioned the controls, it actually brings a lot of discussions we had with Arthur to mind, where we were talking about the controls of the risk. And now I'm not sure if you are allowed to say, but would you tell us about the risk controls that you had, and like what was the moment that you decided, okay, this is the risk. The risk is too big. We are exceeding our risk appetite. Like how was the risk built in this startup? How was the risk framework?
I think so. I mean, look, building a solution like this, one of the biggest risks is around resilience risk, right? And so we would actually look at, okay, this tool is a tool that's very important to our customer, right, on the supply chain management, and then we actually look at, okay, well, so then what's the service uptime, what's the service level agreement that we actually need to have, and that sort of stuff, and then therefore you actually need to maintain a high standard on that service. Then you actually need to when during development you actually need to have more robust testing, right? You need to actually have more cybersecurity checks and controls in place. You need to invest in people. You actually have to be there, right? Around the clock to actually provide the support in case it actually goes down, right? And to take actions on that. So those are again, upfront investment and controls that we actually need to build to maintain that standard, right? Whereas, I guess if we choose not to deliver to such a high standard, then you will not necessarily have as many people, for example, just to be standby on just in case you have questions coming up, right? Or the system went down and you need to help customers.
Well, in the history of Serai, I want to go back to the pivots a bit, because there was the agreement with the partnership which was signed with Coface to bring the credit solution, the lending solution onto the platform. Then there was the setting up of the almost, I think, separate entity, if I'm not mistaken, Serai Technology, which was supposed to deliver software. So those must have greatly expanded the risk horizon of the company. Do you think that they required much change in the approach to risk, or was there a complete solution that Serai was employing to cover all?
I think so. It is our philosophy, right, that we do not necessarily want to build everything ourselves, right? That all the solutions that are available on the platform, because if you're trying to build everything, it's a trade-off, right? You can actually go and build everything yourself, but then your the amount of time to be able to release something and actually have a more complete suite of solutions available that's required, that would take much longer. Whereas you can actually partner with people who actually are industry experts and have readily available solutions that you can actually connect. That would be that would deliver much more value to our customers instead of trying to create the view, right? Now, but I guess coming to your point about the risk, that what we need to be, to me, it's very clear that what we need to be very clear to our customers when they actually go through the journey of using the platform and then accessing other solutions offered by our partners on the platform. Clearly there are standards that we have in that our partners need to meet. We don't just randomly put anyone on the platform, right, and make solutions available. But then there are due diligence that we actually do. But equally, I think our customers actually need to know that if they're using a, let's say, plugin, right, that plugin is coming from us, or that plugin is actually from someone else, right? And then they may need to sign in other terms and conditions and contracts, etc., with that third party, and it needs to be very, very transparent to them, right? So that they can decide. They can decide what risk they are taking themselves by moving into a contract with an additional party. So that's kind of my my philosophy as well. That we actually don't necessarily need to. Again, if we actually try to do due diligence on everything, try to everything test everything to death and make sure everything is bulletproof, similar to building it, then it's the speed to the market that will actually be a problem, right? But then if we actually be transparent to our customers, that they know what they know what they're using, they know who is actually producing and providing the services for them, whether that's through us or whether that's someone else, then they can actually make that decision.
So the transparency towards the clients about the structure of what you deliver and how you deliver is an element of building this credibility and trust, which, as you said, cannot be taken for granted. It's something that is, you have a head start, but you need to really work hard to deliver.
Absolutely. And I mean, some examples are actually, the way I actually used to think is that, if you order things from Deliveroo, right? Now, and if you actually get food poisoning, you don't complain about Deliveroo, you complain about the restaurant. Now, it could be Deliveroo actually, on the way actually, contaminating, and there could be issues, but generally, you know exactly that Deliveroo is actually providing the delivery service, whereas the restaurants are producing your meals for you.
In 2021, Serai was appearing to be in a great shape. In August 2021, your CEO Vivek Ramachandran stated that there's exponential uptake and that in the first quarter there were 250 companies, which then grew to 9,000 companies. So it looked like the kind of the components of success were already there. You had the funding, you had the customer uptake, you had the platform. Now, at that time, going back in your mind to that time, how was the kind of the feeling about the risks? Because this is already in the COVID era. How was the feeling in the company? What was considered the biggest risk then?
I think so. The market demand is there, right? And the problem statement is there. The world is evolving, right? But I think and we actually seeing, like I say, we actually seeing uptake in our solutions, which is I think we were all very excited about that. But there are, the risk to the business is always how you, at the end of the day, this is a commercial business. So we need to be able to deliver an appropriate return within an appropriate time frame, on the business. So I guess that's always a something that's in the back of our mind. We know that we not only do we actually need to deliver a business outcomes, but it also needs to be within a reasonable time frame turned into a commercially viable business.
So given that all the components of success were kind of present, what do you think caused the decision to shut down?
Well, I think, look, the challenge for us is actually building a commercially viable business, right? The ability to having a lot of uptake is fantastic, right? So people actually seeing the value of it, people are actually using it, and people are validating it, right? But then, when I think the challenge is to turning that into a sustainable revenue model, right? And on a repeated basis. That is certainly and within an appropriate time frame. So, for example, in building a SaaS solution, solving a new problem in the industry, the sales cycle could be actually quite long, right? So, because the customer itself are also learning about the problem. They are also figuring out what is the best approach to tackle that problem. And there are other competitors offering different suggestions of how to actually solve that problem, right? So, for them to actually make that decisions is actually, it could sometimes 6 months, if not longer, right? So that is not an easy challenge for us to solve if we actually want to build at this stage, build a commercially viable business on a standalone basis.
So I actually had a look through the internet, and as you say, there are actually quite a number of companies. I looked for the keywords vertical integration, and it's funny that the most of the kind of startups that come up under that combination of those two words actually deal with garments and with fashion. So it does seem to be a very hot topic. So do you think that in a slightly different maybe market environment, slightly different circumstances, it would still be viable to raise the same platform back from the ashes and try again?
I certainly see again the market opportunity being there, right? And not only within just the clothing and garment industry, but in the wider industry. I mean, again, it actually goes back to the fact that nowadays, I mean, in the past, when people are actually building supply chain, they're looking for the lowest cost option, right? And that's how globalization, that's how people actually build the supply chain. But now, as when we're actually talking about supply chain, people are talking about resilient supply chain, right? People are talking about a supply chain that that satisfy that's green, right? That satisfy carbon emission standards. We're also talking about supply chains that meet social standards. Are they actually using sufficient safety standards along the supply chain? Are they paying appropriate wages? Are they using child labor? Are they using forced labor? Right, those are issues that people actually talk about, and you need to be able to demonstrate that, right? And you need to have knowledge and data that you can actually show your regulators, to show your customers that meet those claims and expectations. So there's still a huge need from the market, I think. The timing, I think, is tricky. As I mentioned, look, if you a lot of the industries participants are still kind of working their way through, what is the best way to tackle that problem. There are multiple options to do that. So it's still a very hot topic within the industry. So I think that I'm confident that the market opportunity is still there. The approach and how we actually deal with and tackle the problem, that will also make commercially sound business. That's the challenge, right? And that's where the industry will need to continue to work on.
I wanted to kind of ask you about your personal experience, because we talked a lot about the company itself, but going into this venture must have been something completely new. So can you kind of talk to us about what were you expecting going into Serai from HSBC? Did that meet your expectations? And what was the biggest lesson learned for you personally?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it's absolutely a very interesting experience for me. I mean, my life has been working in HSBC or the likes of HSBC, big corporate environment, where there are hundreds of thousands of people within the organization. Moving into a much smaller startup where we basically build everything from scratch, right? And it's a small company. We have a very clear vision statement. We know that there is a clear problem statement that we're actually trying to solve. The energy level in trying to solve the problem is fantastic, right? and it's very different to a big corporate environment. So I think for me, actually moving into a small and young company like that is, for me, I always look forward to actually seeing the energy level, right? The truly demonstrating the can-do culture, trying to solve problem. How could we actually come up with solutions very quickly and let ourselves fail very quickly? Because actually, in the regulated environment, failing quickly is not necessarily an easy thing to do, right? Because there we need to be very careful with some of that. So moving into that is being able to test different stuff. It's certainly a very exciting period of time for me personally, and also working with the type of talents that we also attract within Serai is very different to the type of talents that we would see in a banking environment. A lot of these people share similar vision. They actually share that the same problem statement in the trade industry. Some of them actually probably have their own business themselves, run business themselves in the past, have seen problems as well in the past. They are very keen to solve those problems themselves as well. And having being in the mix of them, I certainly increased the average age of the company by hugely. But working with those young people and their attitude, the way that they actually challenge a lot of our thinking, right, and also removing a lot of being in a smaller company, and you take away a lot of the bureaucracy, right? You just things can happen so quickly, and you asked me about questions of we pivot quite a few times already within 3 years, but that's because our organization, our people actually allow us to do that, and we can actually build a product and release it, build a decent product, and safe and controlled product within a few months and actually release, right? So that is very satisfying.
That sounds absolutely great.
How do you think it would be possible to somehow transplant elements of this culture to the big corporate? What would need to change in the corporate environment to enable this? Maybe not this, but let's say going into direction of this level of flexibility and going into direction of this, as you said, energy. Because of course there are a lot of repetitive tasks which are well structured processes, and they need to be like that. But I don't know. We are living in the paradigm shifting example in data architecture model. It would be probably advisable for many companies to revise their data architectures, but these are big changes, and these big changes require flexibility. Do you have any advice for someone who would like to enable flexibility of their teams?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the learnings that I think is very useful to large corporates is that we in large corporates we have standard process. We see we deal with the problems and we have developed our proper processes and controls over 150 years, right? So and we build that into our DNA, we build that into our muscle memory. So every time we actually see the same problem, we just lift and drop from our experience that from the past 100 years and say, okay, well, this is the answer. This is how we actually apply the controls. Whereas in the startup environment, I would actually go in and look at, hang on, because we actually don't have, I would have the opportunity challenge, but also actually don't have as much resources to apply the same controls as we have established within a big corporate, right? So I would actually go and say, hang on, what actually is the problem? What actually is the risk that we have with that product or with that solution? And therefore, what is the risk that we actually, what is the risk that we're actually trying to manage? And therefore, what controls we actually need to have? And therefore, what is the residual risk that I need to take on, whether I'm happy or not. If not, then I should go back and do a little bit more controls, right? So I think is that rethinking process, and rather than just having experience and memories of good practice are great, right? But we sometimes forget to actually challenge that, and after 10, 20, 30, 50 years of applying the same controls, right? So I think that's one, right? The other one is that we again, in a small company environment, we can inside we always hear like we try and we fail fast, right? And pick up and do it again, right? So again, this is in a large corporate environment. It's a bit of the culture of whether you're actually regulated or not. It's the culture of whether you actually value that failure, right? Whether you actually have the appetite to actually fail, or whether you actually need to no, I actually need to build. I will think through a lot of potential scenarios and actually need to make sure that my product controls are covered for all those scenarios before I can actually release a product. And that makes a product development cycle very, very long, and also the investment is required, right? And by the time you actually develop the product, the market opportunity might have gone, right? Already. So how could we actually do a small scale POC without making everything perfect? And and we can make it clear to the customers that this is a beta version, this is actually testing, and let's test it out and learn from the failings in a more controlled environment. And I think before we actually start scaling, I think that's something that we could do more within large corporate as well.
So we kind of talked about the advice for big corporates, but what about a lowly entrepreneur who wanted to enter into a similar idea? If this is such a big space, obviously there are companies out there, as I mentioned, that I found quite a number of them that are entering this space, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. They want to change the world. But without the support of HSBC behind them, is there any advice you could give them that could kind of spur them on their way?
I think a lot of look, if you actually look around, a lot of the startups out there, they start from very small, and they manage to build very, very successful products. I actually spent a lot of time through the last few years to try and understand different business models and how they become so successful, despite not having such a background. But I think that nimbleness and that belief in the problem, and also faith in developing solutions. So I was literally just randomly looking at a video and looking at Facebook. When they first built the tool for Harvard, they said, it would be great if we can actually connect everyone in Harvard. He also sees the opportunity. Mark also sees this opportunity. He said, look, I'm sure everyone would be great one day that someone can actually build a tool that connects everyone in the world. So they actually sees the problem, but again, it actually requires a lot of faith in the problem, and don't lose faith.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure hard thing to do sometimes, I guess. Maybe I would ask. You were working on a solution on a platform which was connecting a lot of different data points, and my curiosity is, like Arthur asked, like, was it just a software or was it also a service? Did you, out of curiosity, professional curiosity, like did you try to analyze this data? Did you have like services? I mentioned it earlier. Let's try to, if we have your chain in place, did you try to optimize it on the way? I in 2006 I was a managing director for Eastern Europe in a procurement optimization company, And I remember I was trying to apply software used to model metabolic pathways. In my background is biology. I was trying to apply metabolic pathways modeling software to model supply chains back then. It was fun. It was fun, if not commercially viable as it seems. Did you try to play with this data as well?
We haven't spent as much time on that, to be honest. So we've been where we were at was actually building about tool and trying to collect the data and get the data point onto the platform. But I fully agree with you. Like, once the data are becoming available, and that's also a value that that a lot of customers and potential customers are actually seeing on the power of having those data, and not only for themselves, but also for the wider community, to actually be able to use that to generate the insights that they can actually generate. Now, also one challenge is that it's the data ownership, and when it actually comes to confidentiality, and all that. So all the customers actually, the supply chain that's data that's actually the supply chain that's built within the platform, and the data associated with that belongs to the customers, right? So we can actually we discuss with our customers like the type of service and analytics that we can actually produce and share with them, share insights with them. Then beyond that, connecting different supply chains would require a lot of consent from customers, and that I think it requires a lot of effort in getting across as well.
I think it would be probably interesting application of anonymized data processing. There is a really big field of, again, research and thinking how to get the data which is in its nature confidential and make it available for analysis in a way which is not exposing the confidential bits. It's an example in healthcare. You have patient data, which is strictly confidential, but there would be a lot of common good if this data could be analyzed in some shape or form. So making the data analyzable, if such word exists, which I don't think, is a really interesting topic on its own. So no, I was just curious if you maybe found a solution, because I also from my back in my times, I remembered how separate we had to keep some files and sometimes forget what we learned a couple hours earlier. But that's the life of the consultants. We have a couple of like professional illnesses. We have very weak sight, even worse hearing, and even worse memory. We can't see anything, we can't hear anything, and if we accidentally saw or heard something, we can't remember that. So
exactly.
So, kind of to maybe wrapping up, a question for you: if you were given kind of a free range, if HSBC came to you again and said, we want to back something, here's money on the table, what would be your next big idea? Where would you take your imagination?
No, I haven't thought about that. You caught me there, but I think actually one thing you will see that, and this is public. So HSBC is currently actually further investing on embedding the solutions onto platforms, right? So if you actually look at a lot of business and a lot of trade business are actually happening through different platforms, whether that's Amazon, whether that's B2C platforms, whether that's B2B platforms, right? A lot of them actually embedded. So, how can, corporates or banks or other institutions actually work together through the platforms that provide? I mean, from a customer journey perspective, right? If I can actually go onto a website and, go through a platform, I want to order this. right? And then I can click another button and I can say, look, I want to finance this. I click another button that I actually want to have insurance on this. And I click another button and I actually get another service related to this and have your full suite of solutions attached to that. I think that's great, right? So, something that's, and that would be something that's very interesting. And in fact, I think a lot of people are starting to look into that, if not already, working together with the platforms and offering different solutions to that. And also using...
Sounds like very interesting indeed. Yeah. Do you think we're going to get anywhere there soon? Because this reminds me of something that I heard a long time ago. I remember when Bill Gates was and Microsoft were introducing the application description language that they later incorporated in .NET. They had actually this example that you're watching a film and there's this, you like the jacket that the actor is actually wearing. So why not have an option to order this jacket?
Yeah.
Right, straight there from the application. And that was easily 15 years ago. Now, I haven't seen anything like this. What you mentioned is going even further, because it's not only what you see, but also what's connected. Having all this intelligence about, if you're buying this product, maybe you want the service with it, maybe you want this kind of additional product. All this intelligence is still to be kind of mined and discovered. It looks like the future is still waiting, but there's plenty of opportunity.
Absolutely, and also I guess we talk about financial inclusion and SMEs having challenge in actually getting financials. Partly because they don't have the financial statements, they don't have the assets, they don't have the record. But, can we actually use the footprint that they actually have in these platforms to actually help us with a credit decision on the SMEs, right? So, and with more solutions that you actually use and they increasing their digital footprint, that will also help provide more data to actually help with that modeling.
Obviously, all the considerations around people's privacy have to be factored in, and we don't want to go suddenly into a dystopia where you're bombarded from all sides with ads for everything that you could think of. We want to maintain some sanity. I think this was fascinating, Ambrose. I think this gives us a very unique insight into a venture that, well, unfortunately has been shut down, but has gone through some very exciting pivots, and I think I think I'm not mistaken if I say that your experience is really unique, and thank you for sharing it.
Absolutely,
you're welcome.
Very valuable. I think this is all that we have time for. So let's hope it was of use to someone.
Thank you for listening.
Don't miss the next episode where we'll be talking about transverse risk management.
Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or visit bdr.show to find out more about the future episodes and guests. You can also check out cognition.llc for more information on Cognition Threat Solutions, our services, and other events hosted by us.
For now, it's thank you from myself, Artur Guja, and from my co-host, your friendly neighborhood data guy, Dr. Marian Siwiak. Thank you very much.
Bye.